All right, so today I am getting a brain MRI. So I've been having weird symptoms I've talked about before on this channel, but headaches, what they would call dizziness, but I call it more like loss of balance and just like loss of center of gravity. Like I don't know where my center of gravity is. Weird coordination things where I'll go to, wow, I'm having such a hot flash. Look at that spicy red face. I'll go to pick something up and I will just knock it over and knock a bunch of stuff over. So very weird symptoms. Obviously my neuropathy, my burning pain in my hands and feet, very strange symptoms. So I am going to get a brain MRI, which I've never had before. I have had MRIs done of other parts of my body with just all my health stuff, all my, injuries, etc. But I've not had a brain MRI yet. So I'm going to be telling you all about the experience so that if you need to have a brain MRI or if you're nervous to have one, if you know someone who's having one, etc., I can kind of tell you about my experience, which I've done with other tests like my EMG test, a bunch of different stuff, my endoscopy, colonoscopy, all of that, just to kind of give you a sense of what to expect, what the experience is like, maybe how to prepare, although they've told me that I don't need to prepare at all today. So the biggest thing was I literally had to fill out such a long survey, at least for the place that I'm going to. They sent me this whole long list of questions. It honestly probably took me like 20 minutes. I also had to scan my insurance card, my driver's license. I had to do all this stuff, fill out so many things. And the questions were like, what are your medication? I mean, some of them are really random and I don't know why they asked those questions, but it was very in-depth. Most of it was just like, do you have a pacemaker? Do you have any metal in your body? And they asked you 100 different questions to make sure that you don't. Like, are you going through chemotherapy? Which I don't know why that would be a question that they would need to know the answer to, but a ton of questions. So I've already filled all of that out online, so hopefully I won't need to do too much prep when I get there. But they did tell me to get there a half hour early. My appointment is at 5:10, but they told me to get there at 4:40. It's 4:06 now, so I'm gonna be leaving soon to make sure I get there in plenty of time. I do have to take off all metal, so I was wearing a ring earlier. I'm gonna leave that at home. I'm gonna leave my Fitbit at home. I'm gonna make sure I have all these hairs. I usually have up in a little clip in my hair. I'm just leaving that at home so I don't have to worry about it. I'm just gonna be wearing flip-flops which don't have any metal, and you wanna make sure that your clothing does not have any metal as well. That's pretty much the only prep I think that I need to do. They say that they're gonna give me ear protection because the one thing I know about MRIs is that it is so gosh darn loud, and I have sensory like overload issues, sound, light, and so that constant really loud banging noise drives me nuts. But I think they give you a little kind of ear protection, so we'll see. Hopefully they have music or something, although that might be a little too much for me, but something to keep me busy. I was looking on Instagram and one person was like, I was in an MRI machine and they had to stop multiple times to tell me to not keep looking at the fish. They had this like fake aquarium and the person was like looking back and forth and following the fish with not just their eyes but their whole head, which you're not supposed to move in an MRI. And so they were like, I am a 30-year-old person, and they had to tell me multiple times to stop looking at the fish. So I would love if there's a fake aquarium there. I love fish, but there's actually a real aquarium in the waiting room, so I get very excited to go to this place. So I'm gonna go get ready and then I will tell you about the experience when I'm done. So let's go do this. See y'all soon. I did forget, you also need to take your insurance card, your driver's license, and your script that your doctor gave you, even though I also submitted the script online ahead of time, but they just tell you to bring all of that anyway, so better to be safe than sorry. Definitely bringing all that information. But here we go, let's do it. I actually realized that my shorts I was gonna wear have metal. And so I changed my shorts into some that don't have metal on the ends because that could have been bad. Although I'm sure they'd make you just take off all your clothes, honestly, and put a little gown on. But yeah, no metal, bad metal. All right, so I am back from my MRI. It is actually the next day because I was so tired and I actually did have a headache last night after the MRI that I just came home, had dinner, hadn't eaten all day. And passed out. So I wanted to do a little recap of what the brain MRI was like. So first things first, it was out without contrast. And so a lot of brain MRIs and just MRIs in general are with a contrast. I've had that before where I don't exactly know what it is, but I think it's like an IV or something. They give you this contrast, you do it. You can have side effects from the contrast. I did it without contrast, so they didn't need to do that for my brain. So I got to the location and actually there was 0 questions they asked me, which was amazing. Normally you get to a doctor's office, you filled out stuff online, it's taken forever, and then they make you fill out like the same stuff. But I got to the waiting room, literally just checked in and then waited, and oh my gosh, the fish in this aquarium were fighting, and it was so stressful. My dad and I were watching these fish, and they were like going in each other's mouths and trying to like rip each other's lips off. They were different species. There were these two, there was a female and a male, we think, of this one species that were trying to nest, and then this other one was like attacking. It was a whole thing. It was incredibly stressful. But anyway, so I was watching that before my MRI. It was a great distraction, but it was really stressful to watch these fish because I love animals and I didn't want anyone to get hurt. But anyway, she called me back. We went back, and basically they have like a little locker. And this, again, is just a disclaimer. This is where I went. None of ours is going to be the same, obviously. But there was this little locker where you could put all your stuff. I'd actually left my phone and my Fitbit and everything else with my dad. So I actually didn't really have anything other than the clothes I was wearing. But there was this locker, so you could put everything in there and then have like a little key. So I could have just left my phone and stuff in there. Basically, you had to take off everything on the top and then everything on the bottom except your underpants. You could leave those on. And they gave you these scrubs to put on. I thought they were just going to be this, you know, those little tiny gowns that you open in the front or the back, and they're always really cold. But no, these were like really comfortable scrubs. I was kind of like, I like these. They were so nice. They were thicker, so it wasn't cold. They were short sleeve tops and actually long pant bottoms. Loved these things. And I was allowed to wear my shoes in because they didn't have any metal on them. She allowed me to wear my mask in. Now this mask does have metal right here, so I was allowed to wear it into the room, and once we got in the room, she actually gave me a mask without that metal nose piece, and I was allowed to wear that in the machine because she wasn't wearing a mask. She was so sweet. She got a little Kleenex that she put on the chair for me to put my mask on top of it, and it was so cute. So she got me all set up. She did ask me a couple questions before I changed into my scrubs, actually. Some of them were similar to the ones online, some of them were different. She'd asked me if I'd had any surgeries, and I was like, yes, a laparoscopy. And so she asked a couple questions about that. I told her about, I have a permanent retainer on the bottom of my teeth that is wire, but apparently it's not the type of wire that is a problem, because whenever I tell them that, they're like, oh, okay, it's fine, and it's never been a problem. So we went through those questions, and then yeah, it was only like 5 minutes or less of questions, very fast. And then once you're in the room, in the machine, she was like, have you done an MRI before? And I was like, yes, you know, not a brain one, but I have been in an MRI before. So she's like, all right, so you know basically how this works. It's very loud. And so basically what they do is they give you a little tiny foam like ear inserts for ear protection. You put those in, and then you, for my brain MRI at least, they had me lay back into this, it's hard to explain, there's like a pillow here, and then their sides came up here. And once I was in, she put basically these large foam inserts around my ears for added ear protection, because it is so loud. Even with the ear protection, girl, it was horrible. But anyway, so they put that on. Once that's on, I didn't realize this happened, but they literally had this like frame. It was like a mask thing. It was like this plastic contraption that, when, remember there were sides, you know, your head is like here and there were sides here, and it basically fit on top. So if you are claustrophobic at all, and that was actually one of the questions online, please tell them, because I'm not claustrophobic really at all. Unless I was maybe stuck in like a really tight cave or something, I would probably panic and freak out, but I think anyone would. But literally having this thing right here, and then they put you into the machine, and it is just this really long, really small, tight tunnel that you go all the way to the back. It felt like, at least. So definitely let them know if you're claustrophobic. They did give me this little stress ball, not to go like this with, but if I had any emergency and I needed to let her know and they needed to stop the machine, she gave that in my hand so I could, you know, squeeze it if I needed anything. But basically they put you in the machine, and then they leave the room and they go in this other room, and I was like, wow, can you hear that in your room? And she was like, well, we can actually turn the sound down, because I guess it's like a soundproof booth that they're in, which is really good. And then she said it was like 10 minutes or less. It felt like forever. It felt more like 13, maybe closer to 15. It felt like a long time, but it is just horrible sounds. Like, think of the most annoying sounds you've ever heard, and then there's just a bunch of those. They're never the same. It's 10 to 15 minutes of just different really annoying noises, like bam, 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 and then, you know, it's like someone hammering, and then it'll be choo, choo, choo. Like, it'll just be such annoying noises. These sound effects are hilarious. But it's like the most annoying sounds you've ever heard in your entire life that will just go on. And that's how they do the MRI, the magnetic imaging. It's crazy. So the sounds are obviously so annoying, and I am very sound sensitive. I'm very just sensory overloaded, like easily overloaded for sure. So a couple times I was getting a little overwhelmed, but I was trying to take really deep breaths. And then what was really interesting is this one sound in particular made me so dizzy. And actually when I came out of the tunnel, she was like, are you dizzy? Because I told her one of my symptoms was dizziness, because she actually did ask like for all my symptoms beforehand, the neuropathy, the headaches, different stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I actually am extra dizzy. And she said even to go in to clean the machine is really difficult for her because it makes her dizzy. And so I actually Googled it because I was super interested in why this is the case, because I was so dizzy. Like I was literally in the thing and I just felt like everything was spinning, and I was just kind of letting myself go on this like whirligig in my head. It was wild. But the reason for that is that it actually stimulates the vestibular, I don't know how to pronounce that, sensors in your inner ear by like the force of it. So it's actually affecting your inner ear, which obviously affects your stability and your dizziness, or lack of dizziness, which most people have is lack of dizziness, but your girl has dizziness. So that was insane. And there was this one sound in particular that I was just spinning in my head. My eyes were closed the whole time and it was just spinning in my head. There was no music, unfortunately, to cover up the sound. There was no aquarium view for me to look at, like I mentioned before. But yeah, I was just so dizzy. It was really, really wild. So yeah, that was pretty much my experience. And like I said, afterward, you know, you just get dressed, you leave, you don't have to check out or anything. I did have a pretty bad headache afterward, just because I think if it affects your inner ear too, it obviously could give you a headache. I hadn't eaten. I'd eaten at like noon and then it was like 6 or something by the time I got home. So I think I was just hungry. So there's a lot of factors going on. And then I got my test results back this morning. I had Googled and Google said like, oh, usually takes a week or 2 to get test results. Sorry, I'm having hot flash. It was like less than 24 hours. I got it last night. Like I said, my appointment, they told me to get there at 4:40 and my appointment was at 5:10, which is crazy because Google said that they closed at 5, but we were there and they were still open. It was weird. But anyway, so yeah, I woke up this morning and I already had my results, and thankfully they didn't find anything. We weren't expecting them to find anything. For the things that we are suspecting, it wouldn't show up on the MRI. So we were expecting there to be nothing, and there was. So that was really, really good, because when you find stuff on an MRI, that's not good. It's one more test that has been cleared, which is good because it clears other potential possible things that could be causing my symptoms off the list. So that's kind of where we're at. Pretty chill test. It really wasn't that bad, I would say, unless you have claustrophobia, and then it would have been pretty intense. But if you just keep your eyes closed literally the entire time and don't open them, I think it would be fine. But I was kind of opening them as I was going in the tunnel. Not opening them, I kept them open as I was going in the tunnel, and then I was like, I don't like that, so I'm gonna keep them closed. But yeah, taking deep breaths, meditating during it, they really helped. So anyway, that was my experience getting a brain MRI without contrast. Hopefully that helps like other people potentially going to do one. I know I like looking before I do a test, other people have experienced it, or at least Googling to make sure that I'm fully prepared. But really there was no prep necessary other than those very long forms, and it went pretty well. So hope you're having a fabulous day, and I will talk to you soon, my friends. Peace.